Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Leighanne and I talk about books. You want to read historical fiction? Well, I have some recommendations for you. Bear in mind as you are watching this video that I am not the authority on historical fiction. It's just a genre that I enjoy, and I have had a couple of people ask me about suggestions on where they can get started for historical fiction. So this is if this is a genre that you don't usually read. These are some books that you might want to start with. I'm gonna just go ahead and throw out there and say that several of these books are kind of from the same time period. It's because it's the time period that I know, it's the time period that I read, but not all of them are from the same time period. So I'm not gonna say historical fiction recommendations for this particular time period. So that's the disclaimer, but why do I read historical fiction? Because you guys know, you can see my Stephen King collection here behind me. I love horror, but historical fiction is another one of those genres that I really love, which I know is kind of a weird juxtaposition, I guess you could say. But one of the reasons that I love reading historical fiction is because it really makes me think and it really makes me research. I love reading the fictional accounts that these authors write and then turning around and doing the actual research on the subject and seeing, okay, what did they keep that was actually true? What did they fictionalize, just to spice things up a little bit, or what did they deviate from? I just find that kind of thing really fascinating. Me personally, it's just what I like. So once again, I will say that if you have read a lot of historical fiction, these are probably books that you've already read. So you may want to skip this video. But if this is a genre that you have been looking into trying to get more into, then I would say stick around because I've got some recs that I really enjoy and I hope that you would too. So I have 5 books today. The first one that I am going to talk about is The Other Boleyn Girl. This is by Philippa Gregory. We've talked about it before, but I'm Philippa Gregory trash. And this was actually the first book that I ever read by her. I really enjoyed this. If for some reason you are unfamiliar, this book actually follows the other Boleyn sister, Mary Boleyn, instead of the famous queen who was beheaded, Anne Boleyn. But it obviously does deal a lot with Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII and his court and things of that nature. Not a whole lot is known about Mary Boleyn, and she is a figure in history that is not necessarily ignored, but isn't talked about as much as her famous queen sister. And so this was really interesting to me, and this book is really what started my love affair with historical fiction, and it's also what started my love affair of Henry VIII and his court, and really just Tudor era England in general. I will say that it has been several years since I've read this book. I do want to do a reread. I'm really wondering how it would hold up, especially because a few years ago I went through and I read a lot of Gregory's older works and I was not all that impressed. This is kind of towards the middle of her writing career, and the last half of her writing career has been stronger than the first half. So I think that this is somewhere in the middle. But again, if this is a genre that you haven't read before and you don't really have a whole lot of expectations, I recommend this. I really enjoyed it. So the next book on this list is actually Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. And I do not have a physical copy of this book, and this is another book that I read several years ago. This book is a story about the town of Kingsbridge and the construction of a cathedral within that town. And it takes you through the cast of characters who are involved in the cathedral building, the people who are involved in the town, and it's just when I say it's a saga, there are so many characters that are involved, but all of the stories intertwine in this really amazing way, and I loved this book, and I actually really want to go through and reread it. You're looking again at 18th century England, I believe 17th or 18th century England, I don't recall exactly which, but I really loved that book. I will say that there are some points where it does kind of drag because it is such a huge book, but I really fell in love with the characters and the way that everything kind of interconnected together, and so it's definitely on my list to reread. And if that seems even remotely something that you would be interested in, I highly recommend reading it. Also, this is forever ago, so I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but they did have a mini series on Netflix of Pillars of the Earth, and I watched it after I read the book and I loved it. Again, I don't know if it's still there. I should probably look and see if it is, but it was really good. So if you have the ability to look for that, and if you've read this book and you haven't seen the mini series, I recommend doing it, because if I remember correctly, the mini series actually stayed with the book pretty well, which is saying a lot. So So the next book on the list is actually kind of more of a series, and it is also by Philippa Gregory, but that is the War of the Roses series. This is the third book that was published, but it's the first in, like, chronologically speaking. This is Lady of the Rivers. This is actually kind of a precursor to War of the Roses, and this particular book takes place in the court of Henry VI. This kind of sets the stage for the White Queen and the Red Queen, which, if you guys are familiar, I'm pretty sure Starz did a miniseries, which I only watched the first couple episodes and I don't remember why I didn't finish it, but the books themselves are really good, and this series as a whole was really good. I believe that there's 5 or 6 books in the series. I have read all of them, but it's not necessary to read all of them. I am personally in this video recommending the first 3. If you don't want to read all of them, this book as a standalone is actually just really good. So the next book that I have on this list is The Passion of Artemisia, and this is by Susan Vreeland. And I read this book a really long time ago, but I remember really liking it. This is actually an account of the life of the famous painter Artemisia. I'm honestly really bad at synopsises, in case you guys haven't figured that out yet, so I'm actually just gonna read the inside flap for you for this book. At the age of 18, Artemisia finds herself humiliated in papal court for publicly accusing her painting teacher of raping her. When even her father does not stand up for her and she realizes that she will never live down her reputation as a loose woman if she stays in Rome, she begs to have a marriage arranged for her. Her new husband, an artist, takes her into his native Florence, where their life together offers the promise of love and family. Here, Artemisia's talent for painting blossoms, but marriage clashes with her newfound fame as a painter, and she begins a lifelong search to reconcile painting and motherhood, passion and genius. There is a very big trigger warning in this for rape and sexual assault. However, if you can get past that, this is a story that I did really enjoy. It takes place in a part of the world during a time period that I was not really super familiar with, so that was really interesting to me. And I really love the writing and the descriptiveness of the settings and things like that. And also just seeing a woman from this time period when women were not supposed to pursue their passions. They were only supposed to be wives and mothers and things like that. I did really enjoy that aspect of this book, so that's why it is on this list. And the last set of books on this list, again, this is technically a series. I don't physically own any of these books. I ended up listening to them on audio, and not all of them are published yet. But if you are familiar at all with Alison Weir, she is another very well-known historical fiction writer. She also has written a lot of nonfiction books as well. I have read some of her nonfiction, and they are very well done if that's something that you're interested in. However, she is going through and writing a historical fiction novel about each of Henry VIII's wives. So she has already published the first 2 in the series. First one, Catherine of Aragon, the True Queen, and the second book in the series, Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession. And the third book in the series actually comes out later this year, Queen Jane Seymour, A Haunted Queen, or The Haunted Queen, I believe it's called. One of the things that I really love about Weir's writing is that she is really knowledgeable about those periods in history, and so she does stay very true to the facts while embellishing it and making it actually interesting to read. I did really enjoy the first book in the series about Catherine of Aragon. I thought that it was really well written. It was really interesting. You really felt for her as a woman and as a queen as she kind of got pushed to the side for Anne Boleyn and her struggles to bear a living son and things of that nature. I did not enjoy the second book in the series about Anne Boleyn as much, but there is a reason that is very specific for me for that. And the reason that I didn't enjoy it as much is because I was offered no new information. She, as a historical figure, is one of my favorite historical figures of all time, and for that reason, I have read a lot of books about her. And once you've read so much, there's really no more new information that you're gonna get. You're really just going to get the variations from each writer, either painting her as a villain or painting her as not a villain. She is painted as a villain in a lot of writing about her. However, that is not something that Weir did. Weir really portrayed her as a character who wanted to be the boss of her own destiny, but also didn't really want to be queen. She made her not quite the conniving person that a lot of historians and other fictional writers paint her to be. And so I did enjoy that aspect of it, but again, I wasn't offered any new information. Now, again, if you have never read anything not just by this author, but about Anne Boleyn herself, then I highly recommend this series as a whole. I am really excited to see what Weir does with the rest of the series, simply because those are queens that we don't really have that much information on, and not very many writers actually write about those other queens because they aren't that famous. So I'm really excited to see what she can do with that. So those are some beginner books for historical fiction readers. Again, I am not the authority on this genre. It's just a genre that I like reading, and I'm telling you guys some of my favorite books. So that is my list for you guys today. Again, I am not the authority on this particular genre. It's just a genre that I really enjoy, and I have had some people reach out to me and ask me about good starter books. Some of the authors that were mentioned in this list today, I will actually be going through and doing spotlights on those particular authors as I continue to read more of their work. But anyway, have you read any of these books? Did you enjoy them? Comment down below and let me know. Make sure you keep it spoiler free for those who have not read them. If you wish to discuss spoilers, all of my social media links can be found in the down bar below. If there are any other kind of recommendation videos that you guys would like to see, please comment down below and let me know. You kind of see from my wrap-ups what kind of books I generally tend to read. So whether it be specifically from an author or a genre, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can also message me on any of the social media platforms just to have a one-on-one conversation instead of requesting an actual video as well, if you are so inclined to do so. So that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here and you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you click thumbs up or hit subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.